musical play, The Spirit of Lincoln, which has recently been performed by the Springfield Theatre Centre. The Spirit of Lincoln, written by Illinois native Ken Bradbury, explores the lives of people affected by Lincoln's spirit and ideologies while exploring the themes of friendship, bravery, racism, and social justice that are still relevant today. You are invited to experience firsthand the lasting impact Abraham Lincoln had on his Central Illinois community and beyond. Just one note, one of the scenes you will see tonight has a bit of an adult language to it, so just fair warning. Tonight's show includes 3 scenes from the Spirit of Lincoln play, which will be followed by a live opportunity to have Q&A time with Keith Bradbury and Roger Wainwright. So what an evening we have in front of us. Thank you for joining us.
Daddy? Daddy?
Back in your bunk, soldier.
Daddy?
Son, you're delirious. Now just lie down.
He's here. They told me he was looking for me.
To Jonathan Baldwin Turner, Jacksonville, Illinois College. Your son is very sick. Typhoid fever. Come immediately.
The president. Daddy knows the president. He'll be here. But they keep moving me. They got buildings. They keep moving me. He don't know where to find me.
I was working in the nursery when the telegram arrived.
Daddy?
Just a student at the college, and now he's on some filthy cot in Washington, D.C. I ran into the house, handed the telegram to my wife, and shouted goodbye without luggage or food.
Daddy?
Charlie!
50 buildings. How's he supposed to find me with? You see, they move you. They won't tell you if you're gonna live, but when they move you to a building and everybody there's dying, well, you know. You just know. Hey, Daddy, don't leave me here. Your boy is crying. Can't you hear? Hey, Daddy, don't leave me here. Washington City is crazy. Some 30,000 reporters men passed just this morning. Nobody looks up anymore. Just this morning, some 25, 30 wagons full of wounded men, horses. You ever heard a man die before? It ain't like you've ever heard. It ain't nothing like you've ever imagined. Ain't no screaming, not at the end. It's like some type of fog drops down around him and ain't hardly a sound. And all that he has left is him and whatever he's got left to believe in. I come here with Billy Eberly from Springfield, both out of the 68th Illinois Volunteer Regiment, all college boys. Billy didn't have no family, or at least he said. When they brought him in, Billy didn't have no left leg either. Of course, he thought he did. He kept saying, Charlie, you look at it. I can't see it, tell me how it's going. I say, Billy, you don't have no leg. He say, Charlie, don't be a damn fool. I can feel it, hell, it itches. Look at it, Charlie, tell me how it's going. All right. So I told him, it's okay, Billy, it's okay. Daddy, get me out of this place. Hey. feel the cold creeping in my bones. Oh, mama, ask daddy if I can come home. Daddy, he knew Lincoln. He was a teacher for the Green Boys back in Jacksonville, and they went back to New Salem and told Lincoln everything he knew about grandma. Lincoln said so himself. One night, Daddy met up with Mr. Lincoln out at his summer house near the Soldiers' Home. That night was the first time Daddy ever saw the president with a bodyguard. And it was that very night that John Wilkes Booth was waiting in the bushes to kill him. I'm in number 2. Number 1's for surgery. When I got here, they moved me to building 31. And then they move you to what your problem is. And as you get sicker, when you start dying, they move you down the road. I'm in number 2. And number 1's for surgery. Outside the door, there's a pile of arms and legs and fingers 3 foot wide and nearly as tall as a man. Some men scream, and then they curse God and pray for help in the same breath. Every morning when I wake up, the place is full of dead men. They say they try to get rid of them, but sometimes it's nearly noon before they're all gone. They keep catching me. I crawl out at night when the fever starts burning, and they catch me and they say,
Back in your bunk, soldier!
I say, if I stay in that bunk, I'm gonna die. I'm going back to Illinois. I'm going back to Jacksonville to my mom and my daddy. You know what to do. No! Keep your hands off me. No, I wanna go home. I wanna go home.
Where is my boy? I've got to find my son. Oh, just give me this one. Please, God, don't take the boy. Let me keep my son.
I heard him this morning. They say, give him the brandy. Let him die easy. That's the way it goes. You know you're dying when they try to give you the brandy. I'm a Turner, I said. I don't drink. I'm a Turner. My daddy come find me. He's gonna take me home. I'm gonna live, just you watch. I ain't gonna die. Just you watch. I just wanna come home.
September 1862. Professor Turner searches the hospitals of Washington. He finds his son Charlie in building number 2 and brings him home alive.
I was the butt of every story and joke in New Salem. Oh, that good man Lincoln, he had himself quite a future in business till he got mixed up with William Barry, the drunk. The hell do they know? You tell me, what the hell do they know? I was a college man for a while, Illinois College in Jacksonville. And hell, Lincoln had worked in a tavern before. It's not like this place we bought, it'd been tore up by a bunch of rowdies, and me and Abraham took stock, and we determined there was about $750 in inventory. And we bought it all for $242 and a horse. A damn fine horse. Pretty good deal, if you ask me. And then we commenced to buying 2 more stores. Now, 2 broke boys owned 3 stores. You call that dumb? 12.5 cents a pint. That was the price of whiskey. Hell, we wasn't good businessmen. Abraham was always off reading somewhere, and I was, well, I was inspecting the inventory. We had a legal license. It said right there we could sell liquor to anybody we wanted to, as long as it wasn't an Indian or a child or a Negro. And then they interfered. Those hypocrites of New Salem, they'd all mixed up together, the abolitionists and the women's rights and the temperance. They're all the same people, do-gooders. They go to a temperance meeting at night and then come home and take a swig out of their own private barrel. Baptists mainly. Minter Graham, the schoolmaster, he joined the Temperance Society and got kicked out by his own church trustees. My own pa, John Berry, a Presbyterian preacher and one of the loudest temperance men in the business, would have a meeting at night, and by 9 o'clock he'd have them all lathered up to such a pitch that they'd be slobbering on the floor and crying to God Almighty, "You've got to repent." "Oh, amen, preacher, amen. Rum is the demon. Oh, praise the Lord. Repent and the devil will flee from you. Oh, flee, Satan, flee." And then they'd pick themselves up, go home and have a drink to relieve the tension of the temperance meeting. And I was the butt. I was the butt of every story and of every joke. And then the buzzards moved in, them fellers that wrote about Lincoln, and I became a drunk. A wild fellow, a gambler, a fighter. Barry was idle and shiftless. Hell, you want to know the truth? I think they'd have spoke more kindly of us if our store hadn't petered out. Ain't that the way it goes? You can do anything you want to, as long as you're successful, as long as you're making money. Now, I don't know nothing about presidents or politics. Hell, I was dead before Lincoln ever made anything of himself. We ran in different circles. But Lincoln, my friend Abraham, he never said a word against me in his life. Not a word in his life. And if any man had cause, why, I reckon he did. My own Paul, my own by God preacher father stood at my grave and said, "He is now in hell." Yeah. You can talk about presidents all you want. I'm just talking about a man. Damn good man. Abraham Lincoln, my friend.
They called it Mr. Lincoln's War. Leastwise those who were against it.
I wasn't, I can tell you that. I was itching to join up.
Edward L. Hager, born in Whitehall, Illinois.
Joseph Henry Monroe, Boston, Burlington, then Peoria.
17 years old and reporting for duty.
I'm 20. Okay, I'm 18. All right, I'm only 16. but I want to fight for Mr. Lincoln. Honest.
You ought to seen it. A parade of soldiers marching right through Whitehall. It must have stretched out for miles. So I jumped in line and I followed him. Marched 9 miles straight north to Camp Carrollton. That's where we stopped, and somebody thought to turn around and ask me.
How old are you, boy?
17, sir. Ready for duty.
Well, good for you. Look, come back when you're 18 and legal.
So, I followed the army down to Benton Barracks, St. Louis, Missouri.
Just a young boy thinking he's a man, believing he can help to save this land. Rolls his clothes, kisses mama goodbye, takes a moment to watch an eagle fly. Whoa, sweet Illinois, let go of your son. He's got a lot to do and he ain't getting none of it done. There's a destiny waiting for him. He's got to find it on his own. Oh, find it on his own. So you followed us all the way to St. Louis?
Yes, sir.
How old did you say you was?
19, sir.
Seems to me you grow 2 years this week.
No, I's 19. I's always been 19.
You'll swear to that? You'll swear on this piece of paper? You'll swear to God?
Yes, sir. Because God knows I can't read.
Coleman River, take care of your sons. They're too young to understand, but they know it's gotta be done. There's a destiny waiting for them. They've gotta find it on their own. Oh, find it on their own.
I ain't sure they believed me, because they didn't give me no gun. Just a drum. But that was good enough for me, because I was going to Mr. Lincoln's War.
They didn't even ask me. Or if they did, maybe I forgot. 16 years old. My daddy took sick and died right after we got to Iowa. But I was the first one to volunteer and step forward. It was all right with the Army. It was all right with Mr. Lincoln. But there was one boss I'd forgot about. But Mama!
Don't be silly. Do the dishes and go to bed.
But Mama! I've been banging on pots and pans since the day I was born. At least that's what you always told me. Mama! Mama? Well, sometimes you do something just because you know what's right. Well, there ain't no age limit on being brave, is there?
There I was, playing my drum for Company A, the 61st Illinois Infantry.
There I was, banging out a cadence for the 7th Iowa Infantry.
Right behind General Buell.
General Fremont.
And another boy from Illinois, General Ulysses S. Grant. Headed to war! It looked like a peaceful place, that first battlefield.
April 6, 1862.
Called Shiloh. Means place of peace.
Place of peace.
But when the sun come up that Sunday morning, there wasn't no peace.
There wasn't no peace.
This was supposed to be easy. This war. It was supposed to get over with quick, and we'd be home in about a month or two. And it was supposed to
be so easy. 40,000. 40,000 Confederates on the other side of Shiloh Church.
We got them! We shot them dead!
The cheer went up! We shot General Johnston off his rebel horse on the first day!
There were bodies and guns laying everywhere. So, I threw down my sticks and I grabbed me a rifle. I was a soldier.
Men was running! Grant had to arrest a dozen officers on the first day for cowardice.
I'd carry a gun back in Greene County and I knew how to use it.
Captain Hank said,
all day long we'd charge and fall back. Young Hager was hard to keep in line. He was ready to charge, but hard to make fall back. I ordered him into a retreat, and he said,
just a minute. There's a fella on a gray horse over there in the thicket. And if he shows his head again, I'll give him a scare.
Right then, a commander of the Gray threw up his arms, and a riderless horse came out of the thicket.
Yahoo!
The dead was laying everywhere. Grant said you could walk in any direction and not touch the ground. It was all nothing but death.
All night long, we heard the screams of the dying. They screamed for water.
God heard their prayers, and the rains came. And in the lightning, you could see vultures feeding on dying men.
Oh, sweet Shiloh moon, shine on free. It's the way it's meant to be. Oh, sweet Shiloh moon, don't cry for me, because I found my destiny.
They say the Union won that second day of Shiloh. Couldn't prove it by me. 11,000 rebel troops dead in the mud of Pittsburgh Landing.
13,000 Union. Some victory.
That was the single bloodiest battle in our nation's history to that day. And they called it a victory. Like I said, you couldn't prove it by me. I was headed to Andersonville Prison.
It's a rolling box of pain. It's a one-way ticket train. There's only two ways out, and they're the same. It's the smell of death, the look of fear. The sound of hell is drawing near, and you try to justify why you're here. The freedom won so quickly disappeared. Built to hold 10,000 Union troops.
Soon filled up to 49,000. 13,000 died of the disease and no food, no shelter, no clothes, no hope. The prison warden, Henry Wirtz, would come to us every day, and he'd say, if any of you men escape, I will starve every damn Yankee for it. Hell, we's already starving.
One stream ran through the camp, after it had already run through two other Confederate camps and the prison bakery. One stream for 40,000 men to bathe in, to drink. And when the rains came, the latrines would run right down the hill into the creek.
Some tried to escape. A few tried digging. Some on work detail. Some died on the barbed wire fence. I knew a fella who faked being dead. They took him out on the dead pile, and he spent all day in the hot sun. And when night came, he took off, naked. We never let a dead man leave with his clothes. I never saw my chance to get out of there. So one night, I just took it. The cards are dealt, gotta play your hand. Too late to hold, you understand. So you risk it all, either way you win. At your back is the moon of black, and the fire in your heart is back. I find a way out of this hell, and I'm running home to freedom. Sweet freedom, welcome me home. I'm here to stay, I'll never stand for another day without freedom. Sweet freedom, welcome me home to freedom. it back north, joined up again, fought in 26 more battles. Ended up in Peoria, Illinois. Got my job as a music teacher. Led the town orchestras. Married, had a beautiful little girl. Beating out my last cadence, November 1919.
I came home too. My mama was waiting. They put me on a train. Not much use for a drummer boy with a busted arm. It was worse than that. I lived 22 more days, but made it back to Whitehall to die.
Private Joseph Henry Monroe. Buried, Peoria, Illinois. Age, 70.
Private Edward L. Hager. Died May 30, 1862. Age 17. Oh, sweet Illinois, don't cry for me. I am home. I am free.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Now it's time to take your questions. So if you just take a minute and type any questions you have in the chat box, we will get through as many of them as possible. Tonight, I'm joined by two very special guests, Keith Bradbury and Wadja Wainwright. Thank you guys so much for coming on this evening.
Glad to be here.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to start with a question to Roger. Now, Roger, you wrote the music for Spirit of Lincoln. And Spirit of Lincoln, of course, the play was written by Ken Bradbury. How many shows did you and Ken collaborate on over the years?
I'm trying to think. I think we probably did 6 or 7 that we wrote together. And then I contributed music to probably 4 or 5 of his other shows. Just a song or two, you know.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Keith, this question is for you. Your interpretation of William Barry is very emotional. Was it like taxing because you get so worked up in the scene to perform it, or is that just part of you becoming your character?
Well, you know, you play off the words. You can't play off the audience when you're talking to a camera. You play off the words. We took a little literary license. Ken took a little literary license with William Barry because actually William Barry died at the age of 24. So obviously I'm 25. So, you know, that's pushing it over just a little bit. But, you know, the dialogue lends it to kind of a rough, rode hard and put away wet kind of guy. And, you know, and so that's the direction I pushed him. But at the same time, nothing meant more to him than Abraham Lincoln.
Okay. As a follow-up to that, Keith, when you were preparing to be William Barry, did you do any research on his life?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I sure did. You know, even though his life was short and the highlight of his life was Abraham Lincoln, he and Lincoln ran a couple of stores together for, I think, 2 years, 1832, 1833. And actually, Lincoln wasn't even elected to the legislature till 34. So William Barry never really knew what became of Lincoln because he died. But they ran the stores together, had a lot of trouble making it, as most stores did at that time, because they couldn't get enough, they couldn't get exchange of buying merchandise and selling it, turning it around quick enough that they could buy merchandise. So they had trouble keeping their stores stocked. And that's one of the reasons that they went into, there were 2 types of stores. One was like a general store and one was called a grocery. Well, grocery meant liquor back then. So they did get a license to sell liquor. They could sell, I forget, it's like 4 pints that could not be consumed on the premises. They didn't have a license to sell liquor on the premises. So some of the folklore is that Lincoln used to be a bartender or a barkeep. He never was. He sold liquor. His store sold liquor, but Lincoln never was a bartender by any means. But they had a rough time. Eventually went broke. There's also two stories. One that they both went broke, and the other is that William Barry actually, for a 24-year-old, had some wealth to him, and he was able to pay off not only his debt but also Lincoln's debt too. So, I mean, that's how much he thought of Lincoln. Even though he was out of his life at that time, he still paid off Lincoln's debt.
Okay. All right. Well, we have some questions from our audience. Here's our first one. This is from Hope Cherry. As you both know, Hope. She says, Roger, what was your inspiration for all the music?
Hi, Hope. And by the way, Hope, you did just a wonderful job on this show. Really appreciate that. Inspiration virtually came from the scenes that Ken would send me. And I would always try to put myself in that position so that I was singing from me. And that's really how the songs came about. I always try to put myself in that situation. What would I be thinking more than what would I be doing or what would I be feeling? That was it.
Okay. Let's see. Here's another question. And this question would really be for both of you. And it's a question of, can you tell us about Ken Bradbury, the author of the play?
I don't know. What we got? 4 hours here? We can do
okay,
that.
well, maybe not fill up the whole time,
Yeah.
but you can.
Let me go first on this and let you guys really, other than me and Roger, maybe one or two other people know Ken real well. Ken worked hard at his craft. By profession, he was a teacher, but he was a teacher more than in the classroom. He was a Christian. His faith was first, and perhaps humor was second. And so often he would find humor in his faith, and he would pair that into shows. He wrote over 300 plays. He wrote over 800 scripts for high school and junior high speech contests, and they're still in publication, all of them. He wrote a newspaper column for 35 years, in 4 newspapers. For a while, he wrote 2 columns in those papers. So you do all that math, and you'll see that it was constantly going. I didn't mean to do this with him, but it's constantly going. His mind didn't shut down very often. He enjoyed what he did so much. He enjoyed his friends, his family, like his craft in general. Music was number one with him. He and Roger are both musicians, but they're entirely different musicians. Roger usually plays the notes it's written. Ken seldom did, but he can make a piano jump about that high when he's playing it. So, he was my brother, and he passed away about 2 years ago, and he had cancer, and but clear up to the end, he was laying in the hospital bed. We brought a keyboard in, and Caleb Holloway played music. He and John Love played music of Ken's songs there, and what a great send off it was for him. But he loved his craft. He loved his music. He loved theater. He loved kids. He hosted performing arts camp for 35 years. Thousands of kids went through that camp, learning performing arts from the Christian angle, if you will. And Roger was a part of that too. Roger, I'll shut up now. You tell me what you come from with Ken.
Well, and I'll start with the business end of it. I met Ken in 2005. I had an idea for a show. I'd written some songs, and I couldn't get a script. And I had sent the music to Ken, the songs that I'd written, and Ken would always, write back, good stuff, don't give up, keep going. And finally, at one point, I finally asked, would you write a script for this? And Ken said, "What took you so long?" Ken was not going to take over what I was doing. He always a gentleman. So that was our first show, David, you and I. And then we did plenty after that. And as far as the music, we wrote the songs in about every way you could. We never wrote a thing in the same room. But if I wrote the words and the music, send them to Ken. Ken may change a line here or a word here. There were times when this is what I didn't understand. Ken didn't need me because Ken was a songwriter. He didn't need me. And there's my granddaughter. And go on, baby girl. But he would send lyrics to me, and I would put them to music and send them back. And I never understood how he could do that, but he did, and he never complained about anything. I totally loved Ken when in the music, but Ken and I's relationship went way beyond that. He asked me to be a counselor at the Performing Arts Camp in 2008. That was my first year. I did it for 10 years. Ken and I would never talk about shows or things that we had done professionally. It was always about the kids. We would talk about the kids that we were worried about from camp, or the kids that we prayed with at the altar. So the theater part of it became very secondary. And the friendship that I had with Ken is irreplaceable. And there are times in your lives when you meet someone and they change your whole life. So at 50 years old, Ken changed my whole life, not so much in the music area, but in for my love of my faith, and gave me another outlet to help kids, help people. He was a wonderful man.
Okay. All right. Here's our next question. Another one from Hope. And Hope has this question for you, Keith. She's like, what can you tell us about Jonathan Turner from Illinois College?
Well, they named this great big building after him. I know they did because I saw it. Jonathan Turner and well, not just Illinois College, but Jacksonville in general. He was a pillar in the early 1800s. We had a junior high named after him, Illinois College. Of course, they've leaned heavily on him and Sturtevant and Rammelkamp, the names from that era. And Turner's association with Lincoln. In fact, that was another show that Ken did years ago, and I was in it, and we actually took it and showed it, played it in Chicago one weekend in a venue up there, which was a lot of fun. But he brought in all these people with Turner kind of as the lead because he was the best friends of Lincoln at the time, and then but he brought in, like I said, all those other folks from that era in there. But as far as I'm not an authority on Jonathan Baldwin Turner at all. I mean, I went to Illinois College, and I'm certainly aware of his impact and power in politics at that time, because at that time, education was wealth in the early 1800s, and he was both. So it's important to this community, Jacksonville community, and important to Illinois College.
Okay. All right, Roger, you talked a little bit about writing music, but when you're composing, does the music come first, or the lyrics, or does it just depend on the song?
Actually, in the case of theater, that's a great question. It depends on what that scene makes me feel. So the first thing that I find is how do I want the music to feel? And so that always comes first with me. Mm-hmm. So once I know how the song's going to feel, then I'm going to try to match the words to that feeling. And it comes together that way. If Ken would send lyrics, what Ken would do was send like a page and a half of lyrics, because he was so prolific. It was like a page and a half. So I would scour the lyrics think which can I make verses? Where's the chorus? What can we do with that? And then I would reread his lyrics 10, 12 times. And what did those lyrics make me feel? And again, now I'm back to the feel of the music. And then I would put them together. And like I said, he never once complained. He never once said, "What did you do to my lyrics?" You know? It was always great working with him. So for me, it always starts with the feel. What's it going to feel like?
And I think that's why you guys meshed so well. Was Ken was really the opposite. I would consider him more of a poet than a songwriter, because he would write the poetry, and then Roger would add the music to it, or Ken would add the music to it. But I have used some of his lyrics / poetry in sermons and in presentations, different places, because in fact I used one time prayer, because it's poetry, and then the poetry becomes music, and poetry is a whole lot better with music.
And actually, the only song that I wrote the music, sent it to Ken, and said, "I have no ideas for this music at all. Write some lyrics." He did. Yeah, he did. And he sent it back to me. And it's called "When I Pray." And it was the last song we ever wrote together. Mm-hmm. So that's very special to me. The one time we do it like that, and that was the last song.
I've got that song right here on my phone.
So I've kind of another question for you, Roger, but Keith, if you have something to chime in, definitely do. When you were writing the music for Spirit of Lincoln, because it's set in both modern time, well, more modern times, and then like back in period pieces, and the music is kind of, I feel like it's a blend. So did you do like research on period instruments or things like that, or did it just come naturally and you just kind of incorporated what you thought would have sounded like Lincoln's time a little bit? Because it's still modern, like there's modern elements to it.
Right. No, not at all. I have an idea what Civil War music was. I knew the instruments they would use, like banjos, not my favorite. But no, again, it was just the scene. What's the scene feel like? And it went for that. I did try to keep it really to 3 chords. I tried to keep the music fairly simple because the music was simple back then. So I tried not to put a whole bunch of fancy chords in it. But again, it was just the feel. And the scenes that he wrote were so definite in giving you a feeling. Even if you're not an actor and you're not trying to read it with feeling, you can't help but feel it. So that helped immensely in me knowing, or at least having an idea of what the music should sound like.
I think they both imagine too. Excuse me, Roger.
No, go ahead, Keith.
I think that Ken and Roger both can imagine. Let's think about Reggie in that first scene, and Reggie's got a blanket wrapped around him, and he's a defeated human being, and he's on the floor, and he doesn't know if he's going to live till tomorrow or not. And he's saying these words to us, and we know what he's talking about. We're feeling what he's feeling. And of course, Reggie can do that with a song. He can knock it out of the park. But that scene, I was so glad you chose that as one to show tonight, because all 3 of the guys in that scene really hit a home run with that, because it was especially Reggie, though. I mean, man, he understood the song, he understood the poetry, he understood the music, he understood the meaning of what he was doing. And that's, if Ken or Roger can envision something like that, and that happens to be exactly what they wanted, if he can envision something like that, that I would think that would give you a direction to lean while you're writing the music, if you envision that type of thing.
It did. And there was one line in that song that I put in there thinking of the hierarchy back then, when he says, "Mama asked Daddy, can I come home?" Like he even felt he should go through his mom because she'd have more pull, with his dad than he would. That was a great scene, and it just worked. Yeah, that scene worked.
So, speaking a little bit more about the play, and either of you or both of you can comment on this question, but what drove Ken to write Spirit of Lincoln? Like, did he have a purpose? Was it he just really loved Lincoln and he wanted to tell various different stories about local people? Do either of you?
It wasn't the money.
No, it wasn't that. Wait, he made money on that? Wait a minute.
No, he didn't. No, I own the publishing company. No, he didn't.
Oh. Well, actually, I think he was asked by Jacksonville to write a show about Lincoln for their bicentennial or something, wasn't it?
Yeah, or looking for Lincoln, perhaps.
Something.
They were asked.
Ken just, he was talking to me about it. He says, I'm not going to write. Lincoln has been written about so many times. What can you do new? And it wasn't a couple of days later, he called and he said, Lincoln isn't really in this show, but it's going to be good.
In fact, when we did the show the first time, we did not have Lincoln in the show.
Lincoln was not
in fact, the show I did the farewell to Springfield address, and I did, but if you think of the overall theme of this show, for those that have seen the whole show, the theme of the show is through the eyes of a friend. That's the theme of the show. In other words, not through Lincoln's eyes, but through the people around him, through his friends' eyes. And this is what they saw of Lincoln. It wasn't supposed to be, I'm Lincoln, and here's my Gettysburg Address, or here's my farewell to Springfield. No, it was more just as important as his words in that particular scene. When the audience is out there and they're holding up umbrellas and they're watching him leave that day, this is what they saw, not what Lincoln felt. Ken did a lot of shows about how Lincoln felt. In fact, he did one that was, let me think, it was what Lincoln, after he was shot, what Lincoln would have thought. Now imagine that. But Fritz did that one, and it's a great show. It's playing down at, I think it's playing down at Grant's Farm in St. Louis now. But this whole theme was through the eyes of a friend, and that's repeated throughout the show. And I think, like you said, he didn't want another show. There's been 16,000 books written about Lincoln. Lincoln's in this, Lincoln that. He wanted to do it different than perhaps someone else has.
Yep, and the spirit that Lincoln gave to the people who knew him. Yeah.
Oh, Hope did post a comment. She said that it was written for Abraham Lincoln's bicentennial birthday. Well, that's what she thinks.
Okay.
So that's what Spirit Link was written for. We have another question about Reggie's character at the scene end. It was, he made it back to Illinois. Did he survive when he made it back? Do either of you know? Back to
Illinois. Yes. He did make it back to Jacksonville. They brought him home. His dad found him in Washington, just like the scene said. Found him in Washington and did bring him back to Jacksonville and lived the rest of his life here. Yeah.
Wow. Mm-hmm. Wow. What a story to be that sick and then come home and survive. Mm-hmm. So that's a very powerful scene, because you just feel for the kid who just wants to go home. He wants to get out of the hospital where all these people are dying.
He wants to get away from all the blood and guts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I think we had another question. Yes. The question was, are any other of Ken's shows being produced soon that you were aware of?
There is dinner theater that we were in rehearsals for when COVID hit, and that put a stop to that. We plan, as soon as the gates open, we plan to call that cast back together. It's a murder mystery type dinner theater that Ken wrote. He didn't do many of those, but he thought once in a while it was kind of fun to do some cheesy stuff. And
Ken was cheesy. Everything Ken did was cheesy.
But there is a the Ken Bradbury Foundation, let me hit on that just for a minute. The Ken Bradbury Foundation was formed a number of years ago, long before Ken passed away, when they realized that Ken was doing these productions all over actually the Midwest, and he was funding them himself, which meant putting up front, a few $1,000s for whatever the expenses the shows bring up. And some friends said, why don't we try to help with that? So they created it's a 501(c) corporation, and they've created the Bradbury Foundation. And so people have donated to that over the years. People have passed and left bequests to that or memorials to that. And they get donations out of the blue once in a while, funding from here and there. But they try to keep sufficient funds in there. In fact, they helped produce this show too, for that matter, when we did it in Springfield. And so that group, there's about 5 on the board. Mary Jane Million is instrumental in that, in seeking out what can we do next of Ken's. We have the script. We know the owners of the scripts to get permission to do it. And they are picking up on looking at scripts from the past and say, what can we do that people would enjoy? Really not paying any regard to the size of the cast or the subject of the show or anything but what in this time would people enjoy? And there's going to be more in production now. No, because of COVID. That's the only reason, is because of COVID. They did do a show at Trilopia High School about a year ago. I guess it would have been more than a year ago, but about a year ago that involved a bunch of music from various shows that Ken had done. We put them all together and made one show out of it. So it was more of a review than a show, but there was a script to it, and it was a lot of fun, and it was a full house, as Ken would expect too. So there'll be more coming, yeah, and hopefully they can work with the Springfield Theatre Centre and do some more too.
Yeah. Okay, speaking of the pandemic, we touched on this briefly last week, but Keith, what was it like, practicing and then filming this on camera versus having a live audience because of the, or what was it like to be in a play during a pandemic? Yeah,
it's hard when you're people like Ken will tell you, do not rely on adrenaline from the audience. Don't rely on that. Have it before you get on the stage. Have that there. Don't wait on them to do it, because you might have a crowd, a Sunday afternoon matinee crowd that just got out of church and they're still asleep. That you can't depend on that adrenaline. So on stage with you. So this cast was professional enough. This cast was a very, very professional cast. They were ready backstage. They were ready. But yeah, it's hard to talk to a camera. I've never done any filming of any kind. It's like being on radio and talking to a microphone. It's difficult. We laughed a lot because we didn't know till the show was filmed and we were watching it on film, because we couldn't even watch them film it because they wanted silence in the room. So we were downstairs, Hoogland, and they would, let us know when it was time for us to get up there for our part. So we didn't know what everybody looked like until we watched it on film. On film was the first time I'd ever seen Reggie, that he didn't look like this, and so that was quite a shock to our system. So, but yeah, it's a different not having an audience, because I love an audience. Roger does too. We love an audience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we are winding down on time here quickly, but I have one more question for you, Roger. When you write the music for a show, and you would, write it with Ken and everything, and when you did the show, did you conduct the music? Like if there was musicians or like a pit orchestra or something with the musical, or did you just kind of write it and let someone else kind of orchestrate it?
No, I put the band together myself. They were all local musicians from Springfield. And David, you and I actually hired a musical conductor, because we had 10 pieces, musicians. And I didn't want to have to worry about, the other 9. I just wanted to worry about my part, because I would play on the shows, of course. And unless they were there were a couple of shows that we did with a soundtrack. But yeah, I always enjoyed it. And like most of those songs from the shows over the year, if I were to sit down to play them now, I would have to pull the CD out and relearn them. It's like once you've done it, you forget about it. That always enjoyed playing the shows. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Keith. Here's my last question for you. And it totally just went out of my brain. It had to do with your and Ken's or your family's connection to Lincoln. So do you know why Ken wrote a number of plays about Lincoln? Did he really look up to him as a hero, or is it just because he's from around here?
Well,
and you can't get away from Lincoln.
Yeah, there's a number of fingers. There's a number of fingers in that question. Let me hit them. Some of them real quick. Number one, he was a very good friend of Paul Finley's, and Paul Finley, Congressman Finley, was a astute scholar of Abraham Lincoln. He wrote a couple of books on it, and Ken and Paul would talk about that. Number two, Ken grew up here. He grew up within 35 miles of where he passed away. So this is Lincoln territory. Over the years, people have approached him about, would you write? He did a show at the Morgan County Courthouse called Shadow of Giants, and it involved Abraham Lincoln and a trial that he held actually in the courthouse. So Ken did the play in the courthouse. He wrote it for the courthouse and did it there. And that was hugely successful. He also did the same thing, I think, in the Beardstown area pertaining to Lincoln. And then at one point, I think it's the Looking for Lincoln people asked Ken to, you've seen these sites where you pull up and you turn your radio to a certain dial and you can here's the history of Lincoln at this place. He did that. They asked him to do that in Pittsfield. And he went over there and we recorded, well, we didn't record them over there, but we recorded them here. And then they installed them in Pittsfield at different locations that had a history with Lincoln. Same thing for Jacksonville, did the same thing. So he has dabbled in Lincoln history quite a bit. And it's not hard to find information on Lincoln. He likes to do research on something. There's plenty of things to look for. Well, my Lord Lincoln, you can find anything you want. Get Lincoln's horse if you want to. But yeah, he's I wouldn't call him a Lincoln scholar, but I'd call him a fan. Certainly a fan.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, so much for joining us this evening. I will mention, for those of you who are tuning in, that if you would like to watch the entire show from start to finish, there is a link in the comment, in the description of the show, as well for tonight's show. And then as well as at the end, when we roll the credits video, the entire link will be available that sends you to the link for show ticks to watch the entire show from beginning to end. And we will be airing the third installment of Scenes next week on our show. So we hope you will tune in for that. But thank you all so much, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Thank you.